Welcome, sales team leaders, to STEAMroom, online sales team leadership training for the missing link in every sales team, and that, of course, is the sales team leader. This edition of STEAMroom is about the month of Nocember. What is Nocember all about? Well, this might ring familiar or might ring a familiar tune to you as a sales team leader with your primary concern of managing productivity progressively within a sales team. We've done a little change here from, well, I guess just inserted from what we call the 1 good month in 4 syndrome, where a sales team has as its initial focus on any given month from a standing start, of course, the business of prospecting. Now, this might have happened to you around August when suddenly, we've got spring on the way, very focused on prospecting and the incoming new listings that ensue. Quite often around this, it can be a downturn month. It may or may not have been August. I'm only using this as an example. But whenever you have the entire team's energy focused on prospecting, then of course the sales results that you can see here are normally not nearly as good as they should be. So your disposition as a leader, this can also affect us individually, is one where we get a little bit dismayed about the productivity looking forward. Once you actually, when you do focus on prospecting, you invariably find those right prospects, and then you might then divert your attention in the following month, as we typically do in spring, as we're moving into, the summer months of the new year. We focus on listings, and of course, as you now are focused on listings, or you're directing the team to be focused on listings, they invariably start to list properties. This, of course, means that those good ones get snapped up pretty quickly, and then invariably, we make enough sales to just get by. Well, of course, this then leaves us with those properties that are indeed overpriced. And as we head toward the year, the end of the year, and toward Christmas and the festive season, which is the reason that I'm talking to you about the creation of what we're about to share with you, Nocember, is in October we start to focus on the reductions. The sales might be going okay as we approach the end of the year, but of course, as we come into November, which is typically a big month, and we get those listings across the line, but mistakenly, the moment we start to hear the word December, then invariably we're in a spot of bother because, of course, the sales start to wane. Prospective listings start to say, well, I'll leave it to the new year. And then, of course, we are in severe danger of hitting what we call the productivity doldrums. And what we want to do there is, and I say, how do you actually balance out the productivity? Well, it's maintained with a prioritized activity focus. And particularly as we head toward the end of the year, there is that danger period of December and indeed January. It can follow on if we're not careful, of both those months being lull months where we hit doldrums and listings slow. It's a real struggle to get them on, and definitely sales follow that pattern. So what we want to do is make sure that we avoid all of this and that we get some balanced productivity by maintaining a prioritized activity focus. And what are those activities? Well, in prospecting, and again, a slight variation, of course, we're always focused on those 4 functions, and that is, of course, making sure that you've got loads of incoming prospects of active property sellers, not market appraisals, but listing presentations. And we want to vary this. So what we want to do with prospecting, we want to identify those immediate listings that we can get on board well before Christmas, and hopefully they can materialize into sales so that we have a big influx of sales coming through. And then, of course, identifying those that are going to be ready to immediately list right after Christmas so that we can hit the ground running. This, of course, as a sales team leader, is going to require a focus on presenting and making sure that your sales operatives are running listing presentations and not dropping the ball just because somebody's pushed it through to the other side of Christmas or after the holiday break, and indeed making sure that we can test those ones that we can get now and get those sales to occur prior to the break. To do this, we're also got to proactivate. We've got to manage the price expectation of those pre-Christmas sales. And then, of course, as a sales team leader in the production side of it, that is, of course, working with buyers, we want to ensure that you are most definitely getting involved in every sale as they occur with a hands-on negotiating style. All right, so how do we do this? Well, there's a couple of things that we want to definitely avoid in and around the, to avoid what I call the productive downturn that December and January can bring. We want to create a directive plan that legitimately maintains a focus on results. So the remedy to avoiding those productivity doldrums is making sure that in your planning meeting, your monthly planning meeting, which we're going to call, as you can see down the bottom, the Nocember planning meeting, that you plan for all of those activities to be legitimately focused on inside of that plan so that you maximize the opportunities for productivity that carries us through December and make sure or ensures that we hit the ground running in basically January. So we're on the return date that we come back and we are heading fairly strong. So what did we do? Well, basically what we did is we ensured that we took November, and we want to take the December doldrums out of play. So we take November, we add December to it, and we introduce Nocember. So we're really deciding to not write off December, but combine the month of December with November to create Nocember, which gives us a 7-week month. This gives us a chance of making sure that our productivity doesn't fall behind on those lower months should we keep December. And it gives us a chance to have one of our best months of the year and maintain the productivity around it. So we're going to run it all the way up until the last day, which is usually or typically around the 20th of December. To do that, we have put together an action list that we will send out to you. It is fairly succinct in making sure that we prepare and present and put a timeline together for the entire team to be led through this period so that we sail through it with consistent and constant productivity on all the days that indeed your office, your company is on the job. So there's some little things that we put up the top here. So the first thing that you want to do is set that Nocember planning meeting. You're going to need a couple of days after the planning meeting to ensure or give the team time to manage the price expectation of some of the owners that we are planning to sell prior to Christmas. You're going to need a little bit of time over the next couple of days to prepare for the meeting. So we say that you should set that meeting no earlier than probably Friday, or indeed put it on a Monday. So either this Friday coming or the Monday, but then you've got 2 or 3 days before the month finishes, and that's to allow the salespeople time to follow the preparatory directives to get the price expectation down as we head into the month of Nocember. We want to send also a memo to the team. Well, you can see here that one of the first things we want to do is make sure that we are very clear and concise on setting the holiday breaks. Now, I know that some offices do have skeleton staff on over the Christmas period. That's fine. They're not to be included inside of this arrangement. We legitimately want to say to the company that we finish on this day. If that happens to be the 20th, as it would be close this year, or it could even be up to the 24th or the 23rd, but you need to make that very clear with the team. Also, the return date, we need to be very clear on who's in, on what date, how that's going to work, and we put that inside the planning schedule so that we do indeed hit the ground running. The planning meeting is not a lot different to the others, with the variation, of course, being focused around the hump, the gap, which indeed is the holiday break, and we're going to fix that or avoid that as best we can. So we want to set the Christmas party date. Now here's a massive tip. I've found that the moment you have the Christmas party right after that's concluded, generally speaking, the team and everyone involved tends to go on holiday. So we want to avoid that period as well. So if you're going to set the Christmas party, if you haven't already done so, my advice to you is to set the Christmas party date as close as you possibly can to the breakup date. So for me, that would ideally be Friday the 20th. Might be difficult to book space. Who cares? Find a way. It's the best thing to do for the productivity of your sales team and indeed the profitability of your business. We then want to prepare a team memo using this one as a guide to allow the team to know exactly what it is that we are going to do. So we tell them that when we're going to run an extraordinary monthly planning meeting, it'll be the new month, as I've just explained to you, combining November and December, called Nocember. And the idea behind the 7-week month is to make it not only one of our best, but to avoid the productivity doldrums that can attach themselves to our behaviour as we approach the end of the year. Now, this is the best thing for the salespeople because all you're really encouraging is productivity right up until they break, which of course translates to additional earnings for them in terms of their bonuses and getting on top of things, and indeed setting them up so that when they do return, they hit the ground running and they don't fall into those holes that can be quite discouraging and quite taxing on their enthusiasm and their confidence as salespeople. So we explain in more detail, but however, the preparation, you need to come ready to provide information on the motive of the listings that you have coming. What we fundamentally want to do as leaders is figure out which of the listings that we currently have listed, those owners that need to get sold prior to Christmas. If not sold and settled, at least have that property unconditional for peace of mind, and of course peace of mind for your productivity as a sales team leader and that of the business as a whole. So we're going to need some answers to these questions, and there's some variations on these, how we make the motive up. What or where is the property seller trying to do or go? This is fairly simplistic in the answer that we get, but we want to couple it with some very important questions. Not only the why is the property seller trying to do this, but the most important one down the bottom is, do these property sellers want to be moved before, or are they okay with it happening after Christmas? It's a simplistic question, one that the salespeople will need to ask prior to turning up at the Nocember planning meeting, and we need to get some more detail around this in controlling the expectation and moving these sales or moving these listings through to sale prior to Christmas. And then so in order to do this, once we've got that information, we're going to set up an active sales drive that's going to carry our sales and allow us to predetermine the number of sales we need to make during the now 7-week month of Nocember. Secondly, we want to then get as much information as we can on incoming listings or potential incoming listings. So we want the salespeople to compile every single property owner that so much as loosely indicated that they might be selling late this year or indeed early next year. Again, we want to find out which ones we need to contest heavily to get listed now in the early part of November to perhaps get them sold before Christmas. And indeed, coupled with that, the listings that will probably be moved into the January zone, but ensure that we're taking action and we've got lots of remedial reinforced marketing material going out to them during the holiday break so that we are or do jockey ourselves into a favourable position to be selected by those sellers as the agent of choice. And it's very simple, that memo that you send out. Beyond that is just the agenda that we're going to get to in just a moment. So we send that out. We then are ready to go ahead and prepare the agenda. What you need to do as a leader is jump into that stock list, and then for your own peace of mind, start to ask yourself as the leader the questions around those listings. And I'll come to it in just a moment, but what we're looking to do is run a private grading so that you can identify which of the listings that you are currently holding that are currently available on the market can figure in to your Nocember sales and set you up for a great calendar year's finish, and then identifying on the incoming basis those listings that you on your return will be able to focus on so that you can get off to a flying start and make the whole thing work smoothly, or the transition fairly smooth throughout the holiday period. So basically what we're going to do is ask those questions. You're then going to run in, and as we just said there on your agenda, you need to announce the key dates when you get there. So you're going to be able to tell them when the Christmas party is, when the actual break, so when we break up, when we do return, what the annual individual goal setting will be. So when we're actually going to come, so toward the latter part of Nocember, just prior to the break, we will run a planning meeting where we will individually set goals for the calendar year ahead, but most certainly know where we're going when we return in January. You then need to set the Nocember theme, which we say we want that one of premeditating, planning and producing with a progressive focus. And then comes the important thing for Nocember, setting the goals and targets. So individually and collectively. So to begin with, individually, what you'll need to do is set them for each individual salesperson, or at least influence those. They generally need to be the cumulative total of what they would have done last November and December combined, or at the very least 1.5 times that which they listed to begin with in the first instance in November. So we're not trying to lower the productivity. We're not trying to create an excuse by creating Nocember. We're in fact creating a much bigger month, but creating a surety around productivity in that period. We then want to have what R2S is, what properties have to be reduced to sell, set against the sold before Christmas list, which you'll be combining after you determine which of those sellers want to be sold just prior to Christmas. We then want to discuss aspirational targets. So targets, and just giving you a definition, those of you that have been to STEAM would be well and truly aware of this. The first instance, goals are mandatory. So by their very nature, they are conservative and are typically set or benchmarked, if you like, against the previous year in the same month, the amount of listings that we did in the first instance. And if there is to be any increase in that goal, it has to be marginal and very, very conservative. Targets, on the other hand, these can be, strictly speaking, aspirational. These can be aspirational given that they are numbers that we are focusing upon doing that we'd like to, because you can take aim at a target, not necessarily hit it, and everyone applauds that. So targets they are aspirational, and these can be pitted against what we refer to, as you see here on the list, your best month ever. And then we collate, we put the cumulative total together on goals on listings and sales, and that will be the goals and targets for the office itself. We then come to the next important thing on the agenda, and that is a comprehensive listings to get list. So that we need to know which properties we need to focus on, particularly in the first 2 weeks of November, because literally after the first 2 weeks, we want to be halfway through the listings goal by about the 14th of Nocember, which is about a third of the way through Nocember. We want to be halfway through the target. We want to determine the status of each before or after Christmas. That's important. And then we want to then put together a plan that reinforces the product marketing to jockey our company into the most favourable position. We then commit to an activity or action plan task. So we put these actions down that have to be taken around each of those listings to ensure that we have every conceivable chance of winning favour and indeed signing those properties up. We then move to the R2S for the FAB standing for Find a Buyer Property. So the listings will be reviewed and evaluated on motive, before price, motive primarily, and we grade those listings into A and B. It's the A's in particular that we're focused on, and those B's that can be moved up into A. And then we then, as a team, set the price, the asking price that the property has to be at to enable it to sell prior to the Christmas break. We then set the reduced price on the hot property, and is the sales lead, and then we just determine whether or not the sales team leader needs to intervene to assist that property in being reduced appropriately, and then send a confirmation letter, which is readily available from us, as to the confirmation of the price, or the recommended price, asking price that is, that the property needs to be reduced to. And then, of course, you can see the prospector or the prospecting activity. We then go through and make sure that all of that is maintained, notwithstanding the fact that as you go into the holiday break, you know, you're probably not going to have the same intensity during the festive season that you have around prospecting, but nonetheless, we need to ensure that that is all planned successfully. And then we have copies of all the action plans that you need to put together. Notably, this is the most important document that you come away from any meeting with. That is the activity and the actions that each individual has agreed to perform. So you write that action in as they make a commitment or promise to do it. Note down who said they would do it, and ensure that it has a deadline by which that particular activity has to be performed. The next list we want to come away with is the listings to get, which I just referred you to. So we just want to have that down, and any actions that we need to take to ensure that we've got every conceivable chance. And after, this is where we list all of the properties that need to be reduced, that need to be, as it says there, sold before Christmas, the property address, what the current asking price is. We're being fairly, I guess, optimistic by saying it was that price, what it will be, so what the team has suggested it needs to be, the salesperson's name, and then just a space there for the client to give their initials once they have heard the price that it has to be. And that's pretty straightforward in ascertaining it. So we run that meeting. Right after that, you then go and print all the lists as you've seen them there, print them out, make sure that they're emailed to each of the salespeople, especially where their actions are concerned, that they're highlighted for each individual. Also print them out in hard copy. Again, highlight the individual's actions. And if you have to, pin it at eye level wherever they sit, so that nobody can say that they weren't aware of any commitment or any activity that they had to do. Following that, there'll be a checkpoint, as I mentioned before, middle of the month, or the middle of Nocember. So it says November. It should actually say Nocember 15. But on November 15, we're 1/3 of the way through Nocember, which is roughly a 50-day month. So at that point, we want to be very clearly halfway through the results, halfway through the goals activity that we had set for ourselves, because we're 1/3 of the time through, and this allows us to run any contingencies. So there it is. I'll just flick back over to, excuse me, our other activity that we were just referring to. Yep. And sorry, I'll just get this on or over there, and just continue the oh, I'm sorry. So back to the new share. We run that up. And so we said we take November, added December, and we introduce Nocember. This is how you want to then be able to grade the listings. And look, I must say at this time of the year, I am indeed particularly interested in the top part there, ensuring, so we want to identify the ones where panic is set in, so they absolutely must sell, they're panicked, and they need us to find a buyer before Christmas. You as a sales team need to identify these very, very quickly, make sure action is taken, make sure they sit on that before Christmas list, and all of the salespeople are aware of that activity. We're also interested in those that absolutely must sell, but they might own this address into the new year, perhaps not quite as urgent, but again, we want to identify those ones at the top, and the others all still fall into those regular plans. But it's important that you as a leader clearly evaluate and grade the available listings that you have, and that you get the entire team's energy and focus onto getting those properties sold prior to the break. So just as a recap, what you need to do is make sure that you, from this right now, after having a look at it, set the Nocember planning meeting date. Hopefully that'll be either the Friday or the Monday. Set the Christmas party break in play and be very clear on it. And set the break, the date that you break officially, and then return and make sure that everyone's across that. From there, then send your team memo on Nocember planning, ensuring that they are well aware of what they need to come to that meeting prepared with. And then set the goals individually on benchmarks and targets on aspirations for each of the sales operatives that you have inside the team. And of course, you can then move to evaluating and grading the available listings prior to that meeting, and you're pretty much good to go. So that would be it. We want to run that month from the 1st of November all the way through to the 20th of December. If you come away there with a strong action list, you follow the plans that we've set for you, and you keep the energy and the activity prioritized towards the prospecting, towards listing presentations, towards the management of price expectation and the identification of motive in the first instance, and then get yourself as a sales team leader involved in every negotiation as it relates to a buyer or a sale cooking or any interest. I can assure you that Nocember will turn out to be, if not one of your best months, it will definitely outperform the way in which you used to as a team, having the 2 months separated. So all the best for the conclusion of the year, and let's get prepared to ensure that in 2020, we are firing on all 6 cylinders. The key, as always, it begins and ends with this: get more listings.